Chapter 11. 24 Hours in Nowhere. 3:00 a.m. Jesse whimpered beside me. Worst day ever, he moaned. Rossi slowly folded the paper back up with shaking hands, making a loud crinkling sound. She carefully pushed it and the watch into her pocket. Shh, I said to her through clenched teeth. My jaw twitched. Quiet! No, Rossi shouted at me. Don't be quiet. Then she started screaming and waving her arms all around. I thought for a moment she'd lost her mind, and then I remembered from a lesson at school, make noise, make yourself look big. I grabbed her hand so it appeared we were connected and started shouting with her. I waved the flashlight around. I saw that Jessie and Matthew were moving back slowly. Climb those rocks right there, Rossi said to Jessie, angling her head at a massive pile of boulders next to us. Go as high as you can. Jessie attempted to climb the first large boulder as the cat started making its way toward us, gliding gracefully over the rocky surface. I dropped the flashlight and the three of us pushed Jessie up. He screamed and stepped on Matthew's face in his panic to get on top of the rock. Jessie reached down for Matthew. Rossi and I pushed as Jessie pulled, and Matthew made it up. I looked at Rossi. I knew she would try to argue, to make me go first. There's no time, I yelled at her, and I put my hands out, linked together. She stepped quickly into them and jumped. Jessie caught one of her hands and Matthew the other. The mountain lion made it to us just as they were pulling her up. I jumped at her legs. I swung my backpack at it, screaming as loud as I could. The lion seemed startled for a moment and backed off. I turned and jumped, the backpack slung around my arm. I clutched Rossi's hands. Matthew and Jessie were holding her by the waist so she could lower down and reach me. They pulled her back, and I came up with her. The mountain lion jumped and bit my shoe, then fell back down again, taking my good Family Dollar generic sneaker with her. We climbed another boulder and then another, trying to get as high as we could, as far away from the mountain lion as we could. When we couldn't get any higher, a low slanted rock ceiling right above our heads. I crouched on top of the boulder we were all huddled on and watched the mountain lion, visible from the lantern and flashlight still shining on the cave floor. She paced for a moment before jumping up on the first boulder with far more grace than we had. Then she jumped on to the next. Jessie shook next to me. It's coming, he moaned. When she made the final jump at us, I once more swung my backpack at her, connecting with her nose. She fell back down, clawing at the sides of the boulders, and eventually landed on the rocky ground. She wiped at her face and shook her head, clearly not liking that. Yeah, you don't want to mess with us, Jessie screamed. He sounded like he was hyperventilating. I worried he might fall off the rock if he passed out. With the way my heart was beating, I wondered if I might fall off this ledge. I grabbed him. Let's sit down. Be quiet. Maybe she'll lose interest and leave. The lion sniffed Rossi's helmet, which was still sitting near the crack Matthew had fallen into. Please don't eat it, Rossi begged the cat. We all sat down close together in a tight circle. That was pretty awesome, Gus, said Matthew. It was daring, said Rossi. Yeah, Gus, said Jessie. I think you might really be part Viking. You think? I said. Arr. That's a pirate, said Jessie, not a Viking. Oh, yeah, duh. What does a Viking say anyway, said Matthew. The four of us sat quietly, thinking. Finally, Rossi said, Hi, I'm a Viking. The four of us giggled as quietly as possible, our hands over our mouths, listening to the sounds of the large cat at the base of the boulders. We huddled closely together on the rock. We could barely see one another in the dim light from below. The mountain lion seemed to tire of pacing after a while and lay down, licking her paws and sighing loudly. I guess we'll have to wait until she goes away, I said. Ben, Jessie complained. You guys should have turned off the lights. Now the batteries will get wasted. Gee, I said. Sorry, I didn't think of that while the lion was biting my shoe off. Just your shoe, Jessie mumbled. He was cranky. He always got that way when he hadn't had enough to eat. Despite the half of a bologna sandwich I'd eaten, I was still really hungry, too. I opened my backpack and pulled out the empty Twinkies. Don't, Matthew whispered. It will smell the food. That's probably what attracted it in the first place. I don't think mountain lions are into Twinkies, I said. It was probably the bologna. I bet it'd like to eat Matthew's Twinkie, Jessie said, totally cracking himself up. I bet it'd like to eat you, Jesus, Matthew said. I mean your whole body, because your whole body is like a Twinkie. We all stared at Matthew. That took way too long to explain, I said. I took a swig of my warm pickle water, which had miraculously survived the cave-in, bats, and mountain lion. I passed it around so the others could have a drink. Then I handed out the empty smashed Twinkies, and the cave filled with the sounds of crinkling as we all reopened the packages and hungrily scarfed the leftovers down. These sure would have been a lot better with some filling in them, Jessie glowered at Matthew. If only someone hadn't stupidly fallen into a big crack. You better hope I don't stupidly put a big crack in your head, Matthew shook his fist at Jessie. I let out a sigh. Please don't get in a fight up on this rock. They quieted down. When we had finished our Twinkies, Rossi pulled the paper out of her pocket and opened it. What do you think it is? Jessie asked. Rossi shook her head. I have no idea. She held the paper in front of her face from different angles. I can't tell. I can barely see. How did your dad get that pocket watch, Gus? Matthew said. My grandma gave it to him. And how did she get it? I told you, it was her dad's. How did he get it? Matthew asked. I don't know. She said it had been her daddy's. She said he was a drunken idiot who got bitten by a rattlesnake and died in the desert when she was just a little girl on the night. On what night? Matthew asked. Happenstance. Coincidence. Probably not. I swallowed. On the night that William DeFort went into the mine and died. Matthew and Jessie gave each other excited looks. But that watch was the only thing he had on him when he died, I told them. And the only darn thing he left my grandma, or so she said. She said he probably found it while he was drinking out in the desert. Maybe he stole it, Matthew said. Maybe he stole it and everything else. Or maybe he found it, just like my grandma said, I answered. Maybe that paper is a treasure map, Jessie said, excited. Yeah, and maybe it's a grocery shopping list, Matthew said. Jessie frowned. Why would someone put a grocery shopping list in a pocket watch? I looked at Rossi. What do you think it is? She shrugged. Could be anything. Then she turned her head. Do you feel that? Feel what? I asked. She stood up, punched over, and held out a hand. Feel air movement. So, Matthew said. So that means there could be an opening nearby. Rossi jumped down to a lower boulder, and then to one next to it near a wall of the cave. She pulled herself up onto a ledge. I could barely see her as she walked along the ledge and disappeared into the darkness. Rossi, I called out. I see lights, she said. Come here. I looked down at the lights on the ground. I didn't want to get too far away from them. The mountain lion was still down there, looking bored. I jumped from one boulder to the next, as Rossi had, then climbed up onto the ledge with her. There was a small hole in the wall, and when I stuck my head in it, I could see a dim light. You're right, we can get out, I called to the boys. They followed us until they were standing underneath the ledge. Actually, Rossi squeezed into the hole and then back out. We can get out. It's not big enough for them. It's barely big enough for us. Matthew and Jessie groaned on the boulder. Are you serious? Jessie said. We have to stay here? We'll go get help, I told them. Just stay on that rock and wait. We'll get help and come back for you. Flossie was already tying her t-shirt into a knot, getting ready to enter the hole. It's difficult to tell, but I think it's maybe only 15 feet to get out. We can make it. My stomach cramped. The idea of squeezing through that hole and somehow inching my way 15 feet was about as appealing as Grandma telling everyone in town, in the entire state of Arizona, that I was home with the Trots. Are you prepared to do this, Gus? Pfft. Like I would tell her no and have her think I was a total wimp. I took a deep breath. Follow me, Rossi. I'll go first in case there's anything in there. I couldn't see her face in the dim light as she whispered, Okay. Before I squeezed into the hole, Matthew called, Be careful, Gus. Yeah, man, Jessie added. Be careful. There could be like a rattlesnake den in there or something. I grimaced. Gee, thanks. Don't worry, Jessie assured me. They won't bite you if you don't bother them. I looked at the tiny hole. If anything was in there, I would definitely be bothering it. I squeezed myself into the small opening and started shimmying forward on my belly like a snake, my arms out in front of me. I willed myself not to panic and turn my mind to other things. The horrible movie I watched on TV a couple of nights ago about killer tomatoes. Matthew stealing Valentine's cards. Jessie and I sitting on his trailer's front porch drinking his mom's homemade horchata, which I hadn't had in nearly a whole year. I suddenly wanted a glass of horchata really bad. But mostly I thought of Rossi, also inching her way through the rocky hole behind me. Rossi standing in the desert, her hair plastered to her cheek, trading Loretta for me. Rossi racing. If she never got to race again, it would be my fault. My pants caught on a sharp rock and tore right in the crotch as I moved forward. Great, I muttered. There went $4 down the toilet. I mean, they were already ripped up from climbing the rubble, but now they were unwearable. You okay? I heard Rossi say behind me. Yeah, I tore my pants. Again, for like the millionth time. Rossi breathed heavily. My shirt's torn and my pants, and I think I tore some of my hair out, too. Don't worry, we're almost there. I see the opening up ahead. The opening actually looked really far away still, and the hole felt really small. Tell me something. Rossi's voice was getting more breathless with every word. About what? Anything, she said. Anything. Of course, my mind went totally blank. I stuttered. How am I going to buy your bike back without any gold? I don't care about my bike right now. All I care about is getting out of this hole. She breathed so heavily, I worried she would pass out. Are you okay, Rossi? Just talk about something else. I hope we can make it back without water. I cringed. There was a terrible thing to make her worry about right now. We just drank and it's still dark out. We'll be fine. I tried to think of something else to say. I hope my grandma doesn't wake up and call the police when she finds me gone. Don't worry about that. They'll think we all died in the mine collapse, I said. Rossi was quiet for a moment. Do you really think so? Well, Bo would hopefully eventually tell them that's where we went, and then they'd see the mine had collapsed in a new area. They'd probably think we were dead. If we get out of here, she said, we could leave nowhere. I stopped. Rossi? No one would search for us, like you said. I moved forward again as I thought about that. I was almost to the opening. Where would we go? Baja? As in Mexico? Yes. Why, are you running from the law? I joked. Rossi let out a breathy laugh behind me. Maybe. I was finally there. I pushed myself out of the hole onto another narrow ledge. I turned around and reached my hand out for Rossi. Her dark hair was gray with dust and rocks, a shiny film of sweat on her face. She grabbed my hand and squeezed out of the hole onto the ledge with me. We breathed heavily as we stood and looked at each other. We had finally made it out.